Okay, our next panel that has shown up on time on the stage, and I'm very happy with everybody's behaving today. I must have yelled at people too much last year and they heard about it, so all the panelists have shown up on time today. Our marketing panel, of course, you can have the most fantastic facility on the planet, but if you're not at least somewhat effective at letting potential customers know about you, you'll just have a pretty track and not a successful one, or a really wonderful looking series, but nobody showing up to participate in it. Keeping up with what marketing partners want and expect is different today than it was just a few years ago as well. And boy, do we have the expert from TSMGI to tell you all about the data side of that. Our marketing panel brings together a very unique group of professionals that can help you answer your questions that you might have on marketing and promotion. So I'm going to keep my questions rather brief on this group because I have a feeling we're going to have quite a few questions indeed. First up, from M1 Concourse, I got to tell you folks, this facility is unbelievable. Woodward Avenue is the mecca of the car culture, and our next guest brand new facility is the new center of that universe. And Brad, I think he heard a little voice that said, "If you build it, they will come." And boy, have they ever. The M1 Concourse is built on the site of one of the oldest auto manufacturing plants in Pontiac, Michigan. And I think even Brad would be a little bit surprised by the overwhelming response, Mr. Brad Oleszewski. Our next guest is the data guy, Scott Peterson, the director of motorsports, TSMGI. Over 20 years experience in motorsports marketing before joining TSMGI. And they are on the cutting edge of understanding those gobs and piles and printouts and everything. So much data to manage, and you need to understand that data in order to build a winning marketing activation, and they do just that for their clients. And finally, Tony Perella from SVRA. I have enjoyed your events so much, sir. You have taken this vintage racing thing and you've made it big league. Unbelievable events indeed, and if you love cool cars and fun people, you need to get to one of Tony's events or more than one in the new year. Some of the most iconic tracks. These are the places every car nut wants to drive. Sebring, Watkins Glen, Road America, Circuit of the Americas, Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That's just a few of the stops. And your event at Indy, unbelievable to see all those vintage racers on the track, both oval and the road course. Very well done, Tony. Brad, last year you guys really created the buzz with the M1 Concourse. What have you learned that works for car culture events like the ones you do at M1?
So M1's unique because of our location. We're in the middle, dead center in the largest car enthusiast market in the world. There's 62,000 registered classic, exotic, and muscle cars within an hour of our site. So we take advantage of that kind of platform we have, and our location being on historic Woodward, which is the main cruising highway in Michigan. But I look at our whole facility from day one as not a motorsports facility, but a marketing platform and experiential destination for all consumers. So we don't target racing enthusiasts per se. We target car enthusiasts, motorsports enthusiasts, people that want to go to car shows, people that know nothing about cars, and we try and create events and activities for that audience. So, you know, we've been testing and learning a lot of stuff. We've been fortunate to have mainly successes so far because there's such an appetite from our constituents locally. But we've had a few failures that luckily weren't huge financial disasters, but we tried a few things that didn't work so well. And we had everything from Saturday Cars and Coffee, where we've attracted on average 800 cars and 1,500 people, sponsored by Car and Driver magazine. And we did a drag race on the Friday night of Woodward Dream Cruise, which is an event if you haven't been to, you should come to. We did a drag race. We had 37,000 people show up, which was way more than we expected. And we learned a lot of lessons, and luckily no major issues, but next year will be way better. So just, you know, the theme of if you build it, it will come is great, but you got to create programming that meets the broader audience. When we built our project, people said, "Oh, this is just a rich guy's playground," and that we have a car condo community that's been very successful, but that's a tiny audience. We're gonna have a couple hundred owners there. The bigger audience I want to get to is the average Joe that wants to buy ice cream and come to a car show and come to a Mopar store.
Scott, everything nowadays in marketing seems to be so short-term. Used to be, if you had a good marketing partner, you had them for a long, long time, if not for life. Now it seems like the turnover in a lot of these major sporting events and even racing series, it seems to be so short-term. Is this the new normal?
Yeah, I think it really is becoming the new normal. I think with CEOs and CEOs changing out of roles so quickly and so frequently, everyone comes in and wants to make their mark. A lot of times it is, what are they interested most in? If that CEO comes in and it's golf and they feel like that's going to drive volume, that's where they're going to go. They'll immediately get out of whatever they're supporting. It doesn't matter if it's been a 40-year partnership, a 20-year partnership, or a 2-year partnership. I think the other thing that we're seeing with a lot of large brands is that test and learn factor. They want to see if it works and try it, and if it's successful, they'll do more of it. They may do it in a different way. They may not stay with the same property for 20 years or the same team, for that matter, for 20 years or the same track, but they'll continue to evolve within a sport. But yeah, I don't see a lot of partners being that Lowe's Home Improvement of the world that's going to be with Jimmy Johnson for his entire career. It's just not going to happen anymore unless that CEO happens to be there and be that passionate for that person or that sport for that extended period of time.
Tony, what have you learned with marketing partnerships you've had at SVRA? Is the vintage world of motorsports different, or what have you learned?
I'm still learning, but I've seen a major shift from what SVRA was in 2012 when I acquired it to what it is today. It starts with our scale. By taking something that was regional and making it national to the point of where we attract over 4,500 entries over the course of the year. And we really went out and understood who those people were. And then we took that information and we took it to where we thought we could leverage it the most. So as an example, 4 years ago, our revenue as a company, 100% of it was entry-based. 4 years later, it's less than 50% entry-based, and that's been replaced with and grown by direct sponsorship, spectators, and member revenue. So I'm less dependent on just the car count of a particular event. But back to what I've learned, this year alone, Jaguar and Land Rover did 10,100 test drives in 7 weekends that they sponsored our events. 10,000. So if you extrapolate that, compare it to their largest dealers in the country, we did more test drives than their biggest market. So learning how to understand where the sponsors get immediate return on investment for the short-term side, but yet branding them and associated with the right people is the secret sauce, if there is such a thing. I think today we're just beginning to understand the 3 levels of sponsorship, if I categorize them. It was very easy to go get tire sponsors and oil sponsors and gas sponsors, anything associated with racing because of our scale. That was I'd call a layup. Understanding how to penetrate the luxury brands like Robert Talbot and Jaguar, Zenith Watch, now NetJets, is a different type of sale and a clear understanding of how they win. And then now we're just starting to touch the consumer brand. And we haven't announced it yet, but we just signed Capital One credit card, what's in your wallet. So I think as we evolve and invest back into the business, our scale will continue to grow, and we'll continue to learn how to attract the right type of sponsors where it is a long-term deal, but yet shows them immediate return on investment.
Are you seeing it more of a participant-driven, that the sponsors want to reach your quite frankly, high wealth individuals that are participants, or are they looking at the potential growth that you guys have from a fan standpoint?
I think the answer is both. Clearly, the demographic who can afford to race a $1 million car or $100,000 car and have a full crew is an attractive customer for our luxury brands. But when you flip it around to the consumer side and you realize that SVRA had 3 million views on Facebook and YouTube with one of our sponsors, 3 million, in the course of this year, not counting several events that were over 25,000 feet through the gate, that's a whole other level for vintage racing, at least. And now with us, I made an investment in the professional series Trans Am for the very reason of having another tool to market for spectators. And I think the whole boat continues to rise, but it's understanding what I'm really marketing to. Am I marketing to entries? Am I marketing to sponsors? Or am I marketing to the gate? And figuring that out and spending appropriately where there's a good return on investment for SVRA or Trans Am as well.
Scott, are we seeing marketing partners in the sport? Do they even care about how many YouTube views, or are they looking at a direct return on investment more than just, number of eyeballs seeing something? Because the biggest lie in a lot of things when it comes to web is how many page views do I have, or this or whatever. I've been playing that game for years. Yeah. Race Talk Radio. But is there a situation where it's being more accepted in what I call the new media?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody in the room could probably agree that social media is this thing it's really looked at differently by every single brand, right? Is page views important? Is it about brand awareness? Is it about direct revenue? I think the model is moving more towards direct revenue. If somebody can walk away from a partnership or an event year one and say, I saw a $2 million return, they're going to keep doing it. They're not going to say, hey, we're only going to do this for 2 years because it was media-based and we got the eyeballs we wanted. We're going to move on to the next thing. And I think, to the social media piece, everybody measures it differently. Some brands want to see as many eyeballs as they possibly can on their brand and their logo, and some of them could care absolutely less about that. And they're looking for that direct return. So it really does depend on the brand, their goals, their objectives, and it is a bit objective as well of what those results are. If it is page views or Twitter exposure, et cetera, there's so many different ways to do that and measure it. Every brand looks at it differently, but the one that will never change is that direct return. If tracks, if partners, if teams, et cetera, can show a direct return and connect one-to-one, they'll win all day long.
What's the best advice that you have for someone who wants to do that? Is it still a coupon? Is it an activation code? Is there a magic formula to being able to track that?
I would probably not be here if there was an absolute magic formula, because I'd be on a beach somewhere. But I think the biggest thing is talking to your partners, learning what their goals are, really sitting down and saying, how can I help you drive your business? Not how can I get your brand on a billboard? Billboards are great for a company that needs brand exposure, but a lot of them don't. A lot of, especially big brands that you're trying to connect with, people know who Land Rover is. They don't need a billboard. They need to engage with a high-end consumer that's going to experience their product and walk away wanting to purchase it. Valvoline's one of our clients, and the biggest thing for them is sitting down for a property and listening, going, okay, who are you trying to get volume from? If you haven't gotten it yet, is it trucking companies? Is it dealership groups? Who is it? How do we help you extend your reach? And if you're having trouble getting a hold of those people, well, by the way, we happen to know them, or my brother-in-law works there, whatever it may be. The world's just a giant network, right? So the more people can provide those relationships, open those doors, and drive business, it's going to be successful for whoever the property is.
Brad hasn't learned that you shouldn't mention mistakes around me because I'll pounce on it. I'm not asking for what the mistakes were, but what were the lessons learned?
So the lessons learned were, we have a very small team. Most of them are here. Appreciate that coming out. And we took on too much logistical stuff that we couldn't handle. So the lessons learned going forward are partnering with the right agencies, logistic providers, AV, not trying to do it all ourselves. And the challenge was a lot of the big sponsors and events that came bring all these giant teams, and many of them are not that good. That these big companies hire these amazing, huge agencies, and we end up doing all the work for them. So we kept saying, forget your giant agency, because we know where to put the porta potties, and we know where to park the cars. And they said, no, we know what we're doing, and then that's where logistically it becomes a nightmare. So it's trying to find the right partners for that stuff. It's also trying to understand our brand. So it's difficult because, as I said earlier, we're trying to attract a broad audience. I want everyone from the guy that's got a $100 beater to the guy that's got the 918 Spider. And how do you segment your events to meet the needs of those people and do things? And I think where we learned the lesson most was trying to fill the calendar with just cool events, and that really didn't fit our brand completely. In terms of sacrificing quality on some of these events to appease the general public a little too much was probably the biggest. When I went to an event we did, when was that? Carteau Beer Fest? End of October or beginning of October? Carteau Beer Fest. Great name. And it was just like a carny midway, and we had terrible weather, and I think we had like 50 people there. And it was very depressing. So just trying to understand who we're partnering with and the events we do is really the key.
Tony, when you took over the SVRA brand, how long did it take you to really understand both your participants and what your fan base wanted to see? Because before you took over SVRA, the idea of fans at these events was not as big of a deal. You've turned this into a fan experience. But how long did it take you to understand your market?
I don't know if I do yet, but I'm certainly smarter than I was 4 years ago. We did not have a gate at any of the SVRA races in 2012. In this year, paying fans, we're approaching 200,000 fans across the year that bought a ticket, and I don't know how many figured out a way in without paying for it. I think that where the lessons learned are that we really still haven't figured out to the level I expect us to get to is knowing what to spend on marketing, and that has a real rate of return. Do you put it in newspaper? Do you put it in radio? Do you put it in social media? Do you put it in print advertising? I'm looking for more and more ways to leverage my sponsors to do affiliate deals where they're Hoosier Tire. I'm going to have a Hoosier Tire Day here in Royal Purple through every Napa distributor. When they buy a case of oil, gets tickets. And I'm trying to hedge my bets for every event and have a core of tickets or gate I can count on, and then spend from that. But frankly, it's, again, 4 years ago, we didn't even have a gate. This year, we certainly stepped up. But this is, I still think, very much the infant stage. And now, as I said, with Trans Am, learning how to go to market collectively. We did something at Sebring this year where we had Contemporary Trans Am, the new series, and I brought in Historic Trans Am and did 50-year celebration. And we drew over 12,000 people to Sebring. Now, that may not seem like a huge number, but the previous year we had 3,000 paid at the gate. So the show does matter, but getting the word out on the show, the biggest thing I hate to hear when I say, this is great, but we didn't know you were here. I was lucky that I found it. I hear that every event, and I want to pull the little hair I have left out when I hear that. Having said that, I'm hearing it less and less. At this very city, we're running 2 events in 17. We have our Brickyard Invitational. We're going to do a worldwide open wheel challenge the weekend before. But I'm bringing Trans Am to Indy with Historic Trans Am. We're going to do a TV show around it. 50 years of Trans Am comes to Indy for the first time. And getting that word out in the great history of all the people that came up to the Trans Am ranks to Indy ultimately, there's huge opportunities to market that in a unique way. It's figuring that out without spending yourself into oblivion to grow the gate is the trick. And I wish I could tell you I had a secret sauce for that. We don't, but we certainly are paying attention to what works and what doesn't.
Scott, you guys had a very interesting and successful marketing campaign with Valvoline with the bobblehead collecting thing. Now, I happen to think every bobblehead looks the same, but obviously the people going to Valvoline for their oil changes did not. Can you tell folks a little bit about not only how that one worked out for Valvoline, but how this idea of maybe having a collectible of some kind, whether it's a collectible T-shirt, or something limited, might actually put more fannies in the seats?
Yeah, absolutely. So we developed for Valvoline this year a retail promotion that candidly, I think a challenge in most auto parts categories is getting the retailer to give you something incremental, whether it's an incremental promotion, whether it's front of circular ad, whether it's another oil change special, which tends to drive a lot of volume. People are doing the same things. It's a free hat, it's a T-shirt, it's a chance to win a trip to a NASCAR race or an IndyCar race or whatever it may be. Everybody's doing the same thing. So we developed the idea of the fact that bobbleheads are fairly popular right now, and developed 4 collectible driver bobbleheads of all 4 Hendrick Motorsports drivers. It was Valvoline's 150th anniversary this year, so we put them in collectible cans that look like original cans from different generations of the brand, and made it into a collectible series. And you had to buy an oil change special to get one. Mail-in rebate, everything was paid for, no shipping charges or any of that stuff. But people wanted to collect all 4, so multiple purchases went up significantly. We had a lot of people reach out and just say, even via social media, I don't even change my own oil, but I wanted the bobblehead. And they bought oil that who knows what they did with it. I hope they didn't pour it down the drain. But that continued to just engage the brand with even some of a younger demographic, because a younger demographic tends to be more into bobbleheads. So it was another way for them, a little bit less about driving volume and more about engaging a new consumer and exposing them to hopefully the DIY world as well. But I think the biggest part for us was the retailers were so engaged with it, and they did give some incremental benefits to the brand, because they've seen everything else done. It was something new finally and something different. And associated with it as well was exactly what we were talking about from a views perspective. It was engaging content using these little bobbleheads that actually had their own personalities, and they engaged with the drivers. It was pretty funny content. So all of that, I think, collectively created a pretty successful retail program. Was
there a most popular bobblehead award?
Yeah, well, there is a bobblehead Hall of Fame. It actually exists. This is a real thing. Some guy developed, I don't know, but he even developed content and put the bobbleheads in the bobblehead Hall of Fame. The most successful and most redeemed was obviously Dale Earnhardt Jr., most popular driver. Shocker! I know, everybody's faces looked unbelievably shocked. Jimmy was actually pretty close, and Chase Elliott was very close as well. Chase did very, very well. Sorry, Casey, but you didn't do quite as well as everybody else.
Speaking of the younger demographic, Brad, when you started M1 Concourse, one of the things that we talked about on our radio interview that we had with you this year was that you didn't want this just to be for the folks with lots of money and, the folks that could afford to have their own car out there. You wanted to interact with the younger crowd as well. Can you talk a little bit about how those engagement activities have gone, and is there a secret to reaching this millennial market?
So, and that's where you look at your base of consumers and look at who's got money, who doesn't have money, and how do you underwrite the event. Obviously, for the wealthier clientele, you can charge money for experiences, and you can underwrite it with some partnerships of high-end brands. For the general market, and you bring partners like Dodge, who is our partner. It's one of our fleet partners, as well as for the Dream Cruise activation. They don't want to charge a gate. And they want the average guy, no matter what income, to be able to come. So you got to charge a significant sponsorship fee to, allow for free events. So that's, as we've learned, we're trying to figure out the balance between annual sponsorships, which we have some very nice deals already announced, and a few that are pending to be announced, event-driven sponsorships. So Cars and Coffee, we are driving between 600 and 1,500 cars every Saturday morning with a very wide demographic. But I really don't want to charge $5 or $10 to come in. This is a debate I have with my business partner. So we have to find sponsors. Car and Driver is not paying us; they give us media exposure. We are now bringing activations to our Cars and Coffee. So we started this year with Hyundai as one. Next year, every Saturday at a Cars and Coffee, you'll be able to test drive a car or see a speaker, talk about the car, or unveil a vehicle. So we'll charge for that. So the more things I can charge for and give free to the consumers, that's my goal to make our revenue goals. So I think, especially with the younger audience, guys are, the question comes up from, especially like concert promoters. We've got a lot of interest in concerts. We're probably going to do a couple large-scale events next summer. And they talk about ticket sales and gate and all this stuff. And the sponsor's like, no, we're not going to, we don't want to charge $75 for someone to see this concert. We want to bring our core customer in. So I say, that's great. You got to underrate the cost of that concert. Some guys are like, no way, I would never spend $1 million on a concert. But other brands are like, absolutely. So it's really learning that where the nuance, the nuance of where that balance is. And it's going to take a few more years to figure that out. But, the market's there, especially for us. Again, we're very fortunate, this engaged audience, huge concentration of car lovers. And in Detroit, it's really, there's not a lot of other things to do. So it's what we do for fun is cruise up and down the street looking for ice cream. And now we're trying to give people another reason to do other things.
Tony, when I went to the Brickyard Invitational year before last, one of the things that amazed me, I wasn't surprised seeing people either with gray hair or no hair like me there, but I was actually surprised at how many kids were there with their dads, with their granddad, grandma, whatever. And your drivers did such a good job of engaging with those young fans. Are we using the vintage market maybe to sort of get these kids away from their phones and loving cars again?
I hope so. We're doing several things to try to get to a lower entry level, younger kids involved with us. And at the youngest point, we create hero cards for our drivers when they come to our big events. So there's a photo of the car, the data on the car, the driver on the back of the card, and we give those for free to each driver when they register. And then when the kids can go through the paddocks and collect them, we've developed an app for those that don't want to get off their phone that they can follow the race live and be more tuned in, because sometimes road racing is hard to follow. But now on the opposite end of the spectrum, we started something this year in 17 to get younger kids involved with us who maybe don't have the means to enter vintage racing in a traditional sense. So we've done two things. One, we created a school in the East Coast where for $500 for the weekend, you can come in with your car. We check, inspect it. We get you ready. We make sure you understand the safety elements, make sure the car's okay. You go through a 3-day school. If you pass the written test and the driver test, you get your first year's license as part of your entry. So that's worth $250. And we get these kids in to start racing earlier. Typical process would be you'd go to a professional driving school for $3,000 and you'd be driving a brand new Corvette or whatever, and then you got to go back and learn how to drive your vintage car. We're kind of eliminating that step. The second thing we're doing is we just signed a deal with Mazda, and we're going to have the Heritage Cup, where at 5 of our major events, we will have a separate race group for these Mazda Miatas that are 1.6, 25 years older. I can't mix them in the normal traditional vintage groups because of value. I mean, a Miata is probably a $5,000 race car, and I got $1 million race cars. That's not a good recipe to combine them. But as a separate race group, if we can get 30 or 40 new kids to the track and their barrier of entry is much lower than traditional, I guarantee you a fair amount of those kids, when they become affluent enough to move up, they will. And that's, we're planting seeds for 5 years from now, But I think it's the first significant tactical steps that we've done to reach a lower audience.
And that's one of the things that I've been amazed with your events is the different number of classes that are out there. You know, it might be a nightmare to manage some days at the track, but it does give the participants a level, and it also gives the fans showing up. You know, they might love the old muscle cars, or they might love the old open wheel or Can-Am cars. You can see it all at your events, and I think that's been one of the reason that you've been so successful. So I think that's something that promoters can learn from, and, you know, have an additional series in there, like you say, that hits that lower entry point, and it works real good. Well, Scott, a lot of folks don't realize before I got into this crazy business, I was a weather forecaster by trade for 25 years, so statistics and data are a big deal to my wonkish brain. Metrics, it's all, you know, that's all I hear now is measuring things and metrics and doing that. How has that changed the way you need to prepare a marketing plan for a particular client? And also, what kind of data should a racetrack have at their disposal so they can be smart when they're trying to attract a new partner?
Yeah, I think the world's changed in that sense a great deal. And I think, sadly, it's similar to social media. Everybody wants different data. Every company needs and consumes data in a different way. So someone that may be measuring, it's a younger brand or a regional brand that wants exposure is going to measure their return very differently than a major national brand that's well known, and they need to see deeper elements of demographics, exactly who the viewer is or who the attendee is. I think the SVRA is a great example of, you know, how affluent are these people? You know, if a brand's trying to engage with them one-to-one, who are these people? What businesses do they own? And can I get to them? And how can I get to them? And how can you help me drive that business? Again, it's extremely different. There's no one turnkey way to say, hey, this is what we're going to measure and this is the right way to do it. It's different for every single brand across the globe. So it's hard to just sit and say these are the things you should look for, or these are the things you should look for, because it's going to be different by property and by demographic and need.
I'm seeing a big increase in these car club get-togethers, and it doesn't even have to be a ritzy car. You know, it can be just old GTOs or old whatever it is. There seems to be a group out there. I've got a local restaurant near me called Tom and Jerry's that, of all things, I mean, they sell ribs, they sell, you know, all kinds of sandwiches and burgers and stuff. But when they open up every Sunday or every Thursday night, I should say, and have a car club event, and they change it up every month, I'm amazed at how many more people it brings in. How can racetracks who know nothing about how to organize one of these car clubs events, how can they take advantage of learning from guys like you that have put on these wonderful events?
Well, I think, again, it's location. You can do big club events where they're going to drive. A lot of tracks are not in urban areas. They're in rural areas. If you're in a close area to population, anywhere there's population of car enthusiasts, you can draw an audience, whether it's 50 people or 1,000 cars. And if you look at it, it's expanding rapidly around the country as these informal gatherings. Some of them are becoming more formal and sponsor-driven and activity-driven. But one of the keys, and we're seeing this at some facilities, and some guys have tried to do this and failed. I think one of the keys is not discriminating. So, on cars, we've had this debate internally. We've got to direct traffic. We have a huge influx of cars in a very short period of time. We're in the middle of the city on a main highway, and you can't pick and choose and say, oh no, and we have people at our gate who said to people, visitor parking's over there, and the guy's driving like a 94 Explorer, and you're trying to tell him like that's not a car for a car show. So we've decided, you know what, if you believe your car isn't car show worthy, come on in. And in reality, it's like 1% of the cars shouldn't be there. But you don't tell a guy or a woman, your car's not good enough. And there are some cars that you think, like, really. We learned that. That's one of the major lessons we learned this year is, like, you know what? If you really believe that that car is, you want to show it off, show it off.
And Tony, a lot of your competitors, they do a lot of the car club events around the country when they're not out there racing at an SVRA event. What advice do you have for folks of organizing, say, a car club get-together?
Bigger is better. We've really tried to leverage our events to make the experience unique. So, as an example here, a lot of folks go to a local car club show. We approach it a little bit different, where you come in on Saturday with your car for $75. And what that includes is 2 tickets to the event. You show your car and have a chance to win. You go to the concert Saturday night that we typically put on is included, and you get the last lap of the day around the oval. So it's an experience that they're not going to get at the corner burger place or whatever. We try to replicate that recipe around the country. The challenge is the reach. How do you get the word out? Nobody complains about the $75 or $50 or whatever we charge. It's leveraging our partners again. Haggerty's is one of our national sponsors. So now we're doing email blasts and direct campaigns to get them to come to the event at a much reduced price because they're a Haggerty, but it gives me the scale. While they're there, they're going to buy an event T-shirt or what have you. So it's we're a work in progress, contacting and building a great database on the car show side, and as at the individual level, but at the club level is the key. And it's paying your dues and taking time, and it's real regionalized, obviously. As we've expanded across the country, we're ramping up as quickly as we can.
And Scott, what advice would you have for folks to, sell one of these events to a sponsor? It's a little bit different than what they're used to selling in a racing program. What advice would you have of what differences would there be between selling a racing event or selling a car club event?
Well, I think, Brad, you definitely, both of you guys seem to be doing a really good job with it, giving access, right? I think the biggest thing with sports is everything costs money. Get through the gate at a stick and ball event costs money. Beer costs a lot of money. Everything costs a lot of money these days. Giving people access to something that they may not see every day, like a 918 Spider. I mean, you're not going to see that driving down the road every day, or not excluding people that may feel like their rusted out VW Beetle is as cool as a 918 Spider, because to them that's the coolest car they can afford, and they've got a passion for it. So I think tailoring those events and tailoring those partnerships to the people that want to reach these folks is the key. Everything's customizable these days. There is no turnkey solution anymore. Back in the early 2000s when the sport, the getting was good, everybody could charge ridiculous money and could be restrictive, and things could be exclusive. Those days are long gone, and people that expect sort of to hand a presentation to somebody that's going to be the same and you just remove one name and remove a logo, it's not going to happen. You have to put in more work and you have to put in more effort. And I think one of the biggest things that we've seen from a success perspective, because we look at proposals constantly for our clients, is people taking the time to really think about their business and not just say, hey, we've got this great opportunity, I've got this great facility, I've got this great series, we think you'd be a great fit. Okay, well, why am I a great fit? Tell me how this is going to help me drive business. Most brands don't have time to think about it themselves. They're in meetings 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, seemingly, and they don't have time to even think about how to drive their own business, which is a problem, which is a nice thing why agencies like ours exist, because we can help think about it for them. But if the properties really take that time, you read that presentation and go, wow, you guys are actually thinking about the brand, thinking about how to drive their business and how to grow it, they'll look at it all day long and at least take a meeting. If you get the same old thing that you're going to send to somebody else, it just goes in the trash. There's just no time there.
I'd follow on to that to say, I just had a meeting yesterday with a large brand. If a sponsor says to me, show me the gold package, the silver package, and the bronze package, I say I'm not a venue for you, because my first question to sponsors is, what are your business objectives? And if someone's trying to look for a base on price and tier, they're shopping it for lots of other things that aren't of strategic value for them. And I've learned that lesson for many years in various companies I've worked with. And I've turned away deals because I'm just not going to sell you a standard package, because when it comes to execution, it's got to be customized anyway. So I'd rather, and you'll have more success in attracting them to come back if you try to tailor it towards their business objectives, because the goal, and I worked in marketing for many years, most customers, as much as they want the return on investment, your client wants the promotion. And if you can meet the objectives of your client to get his or her next promotion, they're going to measure their success that way, because they're going to tell you. If you ask this is what I've done. I've learned 10 years ago. Ask the client, how are you measured? What's going to make you get your promotion? And it's gaming the system a little bit. You still have to deliver value to the brand, but that's what the client cares about. Is if they've got measurable objectives and they say that social media, they need to work with brands that get them extra 10,000 likes or friends. Great, figure out how to do that. If they need to have people through the gate and they want to measure because their boss says, I need media impressions or earned media or non-earned media, whatever it is, I try and tailor it that way so they can say it was a success, based on their measurement. I don't know what their measurement is until they tell me.
Very interesting discussion. Again, a very diverse group up here, but it's interesting to see how, two different, a series and a venue are having, success and failures with similar problems and dealing with it the same way. And then we, of course, had the guru of metrics in the middle to kind of give us an input as well. What did we learn from our marketing panel? Well, over-deliver for your marketing partners. That'll keep them really happy. Tailor something direct to them. Don't have a one-size-fits-all. For a media partner, and you're more likely to have success. And heck, try a bobblehead, try a collectible, try a T-shirt, try something, try trading cards. Every racetrack in America could turn their stars into huge collectible stars by having a collectible card. It would be just a cool idea. Also learned that there's always a learning experience. You try a bunch of things and really analyze what worked in a good program and what didn't work in the bad programs. Learn from those mistakes. And again, try lots of different things. Don't get stuck in the same panel of just selling a billboard or selling an ad in a program. Try to find something interactive that will work with those clientele. So big hand for our panel.